An investigation was done through visual art into the company Monsanto. It turned into a photographic exposition that's touring the world. June 28, 2019, they've opened in Amsterdam, in the Ravestijn gallery, where I talked to the artist, Mathieu Asselin. We talk about how he's exposing the damaging effects of the company, now known as Bayer Monsanto, through art, in this award-winning exposition. Art is truth and truth is art. That's what it says on the website of photographer Mathieu Asselin. Mathieu. And here also is guest curator Sergio Valenzuela Escobedo. Welcome.
Hello.
So could you tell me, where are we?
So we're at the Ravestijn gallery and we are seeing the exhibition about Monsanto. It's a Monsanto Photographic Investigation. It's a work I did for 5 years and it's an in-depth look at Monsanto Corporation and all the social, ecological and human problems they leave behind. So it's a kind of a timeline that shows the history of Monsanto.
All right, so we're in your exposition and this thing has been touring the world for a couple of years now, and we're in Amsterdam right now. So let's talk about Monsanto. Let's find a quiet place and talk about what this exhibition is about.
Okay, great.
Alles good?
Yeah.
All right. So before we start going into the history of Monsanto, in your words, what is it? Could you describe the company called Monsanto?
Wow, it's hard to describe. It's a company that has more than 117 years old. 117 years. And it's an American-based company, or at least used to be before Bayer bought it. And it's a company that has made so many products, but especially they focus on chemical products and all their derivatives. It's only in the end of the 70s, 80s, that they start working on the food crops and seeds, pesticides, and all these things. So
that's what they're known for now. Genetically modified seeds.
Genetically modified seeds and all the products that go with those seeds.
Like Roundup.
Or fertilizers and so many on and on.
Yeah. So if we go back in time to where it started, 1901.
Yeah.
And then it was founded or situated in Sauget, Illinois.
Mm-hmm.
Am I pronouncing it right?
Yeah.
In 1926.
Yeah.
And it was called Monsanto City at the time.
Yeah. This is a city that they took over and they completely deregularize this place. They put their laws, so they can really do whatever they want or they need to do for their industry. So no, very little controls, environmental controls, and all the things.
Yeah. Yeah, that's why they created their own kind of city. So
of course, Monsanto City,
be in their own jurisdiction.
Yeah, and today is one of the most contaminated sites in the United States.
So when you decided to do a photographic, reportage, you went back to that city also.
Yeah,
what did you find?
One of the places, but I found today still a very industrial city, and you can smell in the air the chemical odors but now it's not only Monsanto. There are many other chemical petrol-based companies. Actually, Monsanto is not there anymore. They sold the plant to another company. Nonetheless, the traces of Monsanto is still there today.
Also with the people, if you talk to them, do they know the history of that city?
Yeah, of course. But, I thought people were very reluctant to talk about what happened there. But of course, people are still living there, and people live like very close to the contaminated sites. I have a picture in the book that shows people who live just a few meters from gates, and behind those gates, they are one of the most contaminated places in the United States.
Why are they reluctant to talk about it then?
Because many of these people work there, and many of these people live there. So I understand it's very hard to talk about your own problems and what for. We've been living here. We live here already.
What's the point? I mean,
what is the point? We cannot go anywhere. This is our place. So
So were you welcome there, or was it like, what are you going to do with your camera? What are you?
In many places, most of the places I was welcome. It doesn't matter if it's in Vietnam or with the farmers in the Midwest of the United States. In other places, not so much. People didn't want to talk too much about it. So yeah, that really depends on the place. But generally speaking, I was very welcome each time I went to photograph.
I think this is a good example, no?
Yeah.
About what happened in one of the cities. So Mathieu couldn't, after having a talk, and when he realized that people were not able to talk about some stuff, they didn't want to really tell the history. And then this is what I really appreciate this image, who tells how the project get into some information. So he went to the University of Missouri to get to the files and the microfilms to understand what was happening.
Yeah, in Sturgeon, in this place, like somewhere here, a big accident happened with a Monsanto train coming from Sujet. The train has a crash, an accident, and a lot of chemical product got spilled, and they hide what the content was, and a lot of people in this town suffered the consequences of that. So when I went there, people didn't want to talk about what happened, and it was very hard to find any archival material. So I decided to go to the closest university to that town and dig into the archivals of that university, and this is where I found all these microfilms with all these newspaper clips talking about what happened.
So one of the first products, I'm going to call it products that Monsanto was known for is what was invented in 1948, and we know it as Agent Orange.
Yeah, I mean, the first big product they invented is this kind of artificial sugar. So I think this is the first big product they made. But after that, and before the Agent Orange, they were making hundreds of products, from paints, hydraulic liquid, PCV, all these products. So Agent Orange is just one more of these products. Before Agent Orange, they build fabrics, so many things, plastics.
No. Here on the advertising on the first part of the book, it's where Mathieu apparently says that Monsanto need to introduce himself, and you can see the different products that are going to be made at that time. So here you've got the sugar, for example. Yeah. Making sugar cakes always rise to the occasion. This is a Monsanto today.
Yeah, they make, for example, products for pastry, but also they make nylon from socks. And so the quantity of product is amazing, is huge, it's very large.
Still until today, or is it currently more the GMOs and?
No. Today is centered on the agro industry.
Yeah, okay. Seeds,
pesticides, all these kind of things.
Okay. Now I mentioned Agent Orange because that's most known for people who know about the Vietnam War. That stuff was sprayed over the trees to get rid of the leaves, right?
Yeah, the canopy. Yeah, to get rid of pretty much everything. So you can see the movement of the North Vietnamese.
So you can see the movement.
And actually, at the beginning, they was saying that this was a very humane way of doing a war, because instead of bombing the hell out of this forest, and they were killing the canopy, so like that the Viet Congs couldn't move under the canopy instead of bombing them. But you can take that however you want, but the consequences of Agent Orange we're still seeing it today.
Yeah, you went there also with your camera.
Yeah, I went there to photograph mostly. I went there to photograph mostly third generation victims of Agent Orange. That mean young adults and kids.
Yeah, maybe you can explain that. So in the 1960s, United States went to Vietnam to fought the war there, sprayed Agent Orange, and you go there in 2015.
Yeah, say 15.
Yeah, third generation. So how does that happen, that people are still being born there with birth defects?
Yeah. Yeah. The thing with Agent Orange is that there is such a powerful chemical. The dioxin is the main, the very bad component on it. The problem is that we don't know how it will, what will happen with this. We see today
We see what
the
happened.
consequences,
Yeah.
but we don't know how this is going to evolve and for how long and how many generations ahead will carry these genetic modifications.
Yeah, so the humans have been genetically altered in a way.
Yeah, of course. I mean, when you see kids with no eyes, like one of the kids I photographed, or kids with all these kind of deformations, this is genetically modifications and more than modifications. This is genetically alterations.
Is United States taking responsibility for that in a way?
No, not that much. I think I don't know. I think not long ago, the United States was saying yes, we are responsible for that, but I don't know until what point. Still,
Not to the point of money.
No, I don't think so. I mean, who is giving much of the money is Japan, for example, to Vietnam, at least for this kids' hospital. They're paying for a lot of that. The United States, until 2015, when I was there, 16, they haven't done much. So the United States, the problem is that the Agent Orange is a box of Pandoras. You imagine an entire country contaminated with Agent Orange. If you start allowing lawsuits to go through, when this will going to stop? And this is exactly what is happening with Bayer right now, that is getting all this hate and all these lawsuits.
Yeah.
I mean, at least for now, they're very few, but the ones they're waiting behind is huge. So this is the same problem in Vietnam. If they say, yes, we are responsible for this person, and what about the next, and the next, and the next, and we're talking a very large number.
And at the same time, what happened, and like this kind of image will tell about this, is like the soldier, U.S. soldier, also went down to the ground, and they took the malformations back. So these kind of people are also Americans.
There's American children also being born with birth defects.
Yeah, Vietnam veterans, when they return to the United States, mostly the veterans that work with Agent Orange, because you need personnel to manipulate Agent Orange. When they come back to the United States and they have kids their own, the kids that now they're adults, women and men, they have exactly the same problems of the kids in Vietnam.
Yeah. So if you go to Vietnam, are they aware of why the birth defects are happening there?
Oh, they're very aware.
So how are they looking at the United States? Are they blaming them, or?
Of course, yeah. I mean, you need to understand that in Vietnam it's called the American War.
Yeah.
It's not called the Vietnam War.
Oh.
So yeah, of course they blame them, and they're trying to as much as possible to.
So you're making this photographic series.
Yeah.
Have you contacted Monsanto?
No, never. I'm not interested about contacting Monsanto. I did my job in my site that is doing a research on what is Monsanto and what happened. I didn't feel the necessity of calling Monsanto. I think whatever good Monsanto have done, it doesn't justify all the bad they have done. And I know I sent a letter to Monsanto, like many journalists and TV, and they will reply with a letter saying, like, thank you very much, we're not interested. And there is the link to our webpage, so you can see the beautiful things we do.
You're being ignored also.
Of course, yeah. And I give a Monsanto their voice at the beginning of my book.
Yeah.
I have publicities from Monsanto that show what is the future, or what is the life they want, or they're trying to sell at least.
Yeah. So okay, that's the reaction of Monsanto, like downplay it or not respond too much. How are you being received in press?
Very good. I think in France, mostly in France, I think France is taking, at least in the civilian side, actions, very strong actions against Monsanto. This is not following in the political spectrum. politics are more receptive to change their view on glyphosate, and many proposals to prohibit glyphosate is being stopped right away, not only in France, in the French political system, but at the same time in the European Parliament. And there we open a new door. There is the lobbying of these big corporations in the political system in Europe, in France and Europe, in the United States. And
yeah, so glyphosate, that's the component in Roundup.
In Roundup, and of course, yeah.
Yeah, and so what you're saying is the public and the public debate and newspapers, they're picking up on your art,
yeah,
and on the story,
yeah,
but politicians are not really.
Are not following. No, they're not. I mean,
are you contacting them then?
Listen, I was invited to the European Parliament to do an exhibition. What I did, and you have a very few, but nonetheless, you have politicians that are fighting to pass, bans on glyphosate, pesticides, GMOs, all the things. And I think there is a political movement that is doing his job. But again, these people, these politicians and they are kind of marginalized in this powerful economic power.
By what?
By what? By the lobbying of Bayer, of Monsanto.
Okay, but if you're an elected politician and you're in European Parliament, then you're supposed to do your job and look at what's good for European Union.
Yeah, good. Tell them that. But this is not the reality. The big majority of the politicians are lobbying, but these big corporations. Why you think we haven't taken strict measures in global warming, in poverty, in immigration, in why? Because the interests are too big, and especially in the chemical sector in Europe. And don't forget, who is the biggest chemical producer in Europe is Germany, and who has the bigger economical power in Europe, Germany. So Germans, politically speaking, they blocked as much as possible any new law against the chemical sector.
Okay. So another approach to get change that you're looking for is through education.
Yeah, it's through education, or just go and burn the shit out of the European Parliament until they change their way. I mean, I'm not trying to be radical. I'm not saying that these people should do that, and I won't do that. I think we all should go through as much as possible through politics and through civil disobedience and to manifestations and to activists to change things. Now, the big problem is not if things will change. I think things will change. The problem is how fast things will change. And I don't know if we have the time and
the patience also.
And yeah, but it's not even about, because if we have time, we have patience. The problem is that we don't have any more time. I mean, at least what the big majority of scientists, serious people are saying is that we're going to the wall very fast. Yeah. And maybe we don't have enough time if we change quickly. So this is not anymore about having patience. This is about stopping the bullshit of politics, and the way politics are being bullshitting us, I'm sorry for the word, or lying us. Their job is to alert us from danger and make exactly the mechanism that will protect the community, civil, from danger.
It's a multi-layer approach. So you need politics to act, but you can also make the point that politics represent us as voters in a way. So what we can also do, and that's why I started to talk about education, educate ourselves. Yeah. And when you go to a garden shop in the Netherlands, where we are currently in Amsterdam, there's Roundup there for sale for consumers. Yeah. So when you educate the people, they will stop buying the product.
But nothing, yes, but education, of course, education is important. But the problem is that the politicians need to educate us. They need to put in place the systems that will make us understand how bad and how dangerous are all these products. I mean, don't forget, schools are public. The biggest educational system in Europe is public. Mm-hmm. So if public public mean politicians, mean people who make decisions. If these people don't make the right decisions, education will come. And of course, we will take education in our hands. Yeah. But this is a longer process that if it's put by by politics and laws, they have the money to make this change happen as faster. Otherwise, sure, it can go, and it's doing it by the public.
But you are, with your art and your research, you are approaching education systems, schools?
Of course, yeah.
How are you being received there?
No, well, very well, of course. But education is not my job. The education should be the job of the politicians, the Minister of Culture, the Minister of Education. This is, you go to the French webpage of environmental webpage, and you see how they talk about climate change. It's a joke. You don't feel any urgency of any type when you have thousands of scientists saying like, hey guys, this is bad. No. And the same thing with corporations. They're all doing this kind of greenwash that, hey, we're changing. They're not changing. They're just adjusting a little bit so they can keep selling as much as possible.
They're in the business of making money.
There we go. They're in the business of making money.
Maybe you can just talk about the funny sentence that La Roche says when we were...
André Laroche and André Hoffman from the La Roche laboratories not long ago in Luma Foundation says, and he's right, industry is behind all these disasters, ecological disasters. I think more than ecological disaster, but let's leave it in ecological disaster. And suddenly he says, but industry will solve these problems. Again, this is bullshit. Problems are being solved in spite of the industry and the corporations. So what I think is very important before we start applying the possible solutions of the problem, one thing we need to do before is to stop the bullshit. And we need all these CEOs, all these actionaries, all these stop politicians. We need to stop them and to stop the bullshit right away, because otherwise we're not going...
Through politics or through the street or through art?
Through everything. As much as possible. No violence. I agree with that. I think even violence have maybe solved certain problems, but I don't think we need to go through that. But I think, yes, we need public disobedience, for example, and voting. I think voting is a fantastic weapon. Now, what we need to punish to voting as well, because many politicians promise the sky and the moon and they don't do it. So next term, you know what? Bye.
So marketing is a big part of that, and getting your message or my message or your message across takes a lot of money and a lot of effort. And you're up against mighty adversaries. So Monsanto is a very rich company, and they're very good in marketing. So if you go back to the timeline that we were doing, we were out of Vietnam. That was the Vietnam War. And another example that you showed pictures of was how Disney worked with Monsanto back in 1957. Yeah. And in Disneyland, and Walt Disney was still alive back then, they created the House of the Future. Yeah. So that's cool, right? Yeah. That's a nice, with plastics and stuff. Mm-hmm. And you went back there and shot pictures.
No, I didn't went back there, but I use all the archival materials. Okay. I use videos, I use postcards to show the marketing side of the PR side of Monsanto. And what interests me about that is to see how they manipulate the media and the true publicity. But what interests me about that is, if you look at these ads, the ads are from the 40s until the 80s. If you look at these ads today, you say like, oh, this is completely crazy. How these people... But what is interesting is that if you look at today's Monsanto and Bayer ads, in 50 years, you will look at these ads exactly like are you looking at the ads on my book. What I'm trying to say is that history repeats itself. And one of the important things of doing a timeline of Monsanto is to show how history repeats itself. And how today we are confronting problems that we already went through 50, 40, 30 years ago.
That's depressing. We're
It's
repeating.
completely depressing, and we're repeating history. I mean, you see the rise of the extreme right in Europe now. That remind you something by any chance? So
And you're powerless. You feel powerless sometimes.
yeah, but
to
you feel
change them.
powerless because this neoliberalism and this capitalist way of doing things, one of their tools, or one of their weapons, more than a tool, a weapon, is the individualism. So nothing better than individualism for consumption. Each one will consume a washing machine. You imagine, instead of 10 people consuming one washing machine. So, and also individualism is wonderful because it's very hard to make changes as individuals. So this keeps us, as individuals, yeah, I can protest, but I'm by myself. What I'm going to do? And this is, if you talk to anybody, many young people, they say like, yeah, but what I can do. And it's not what we can do. Why? Because we live in a very individualistic society. And even in Europe, in comparison to the United States, is much more social.
Yeah.
But even like that, we live in a very...
But before you did this project, you did the 99%.
Mm-hmm.
You were making pictures of you did a... you explained it to me, but that was about Occupy Wall Street.
Yeah. So in 2000... I
There's a picture here. No?
I live in New York for a very long time, and I went through the crisis of 2008, the financial crisis and the crash of Wall Street, and we were very pissed about it. We were like, why? What happened? Why these guys negotiated with all our money and knowing that this thing will crash sooner or later? And so, okay, we got peace. But in 2011, New York Times published an article telling about the record profits of all these institutions and private business, financial institutions that were making record money, just a few years after this crash. And mostly the middle class in the United States were still suffering still.
And pretty much eradicated currently.
Eradicated. And the other thing is that all these politicians that bail out these big firms were saying it's time to, you need to adjust your bail and you need to make sacrifices for the... And suddenly you have these motherfuckers making billions in profits 3 years after.
Yeah.
So this movement is a consequence of that. And I say to myself, I believe on that. I believe on this movement. I believe in what they represent, this Wall Street movement. Yeah. And I say I need to do something about it. So I made this newspaper.
So the reason that I mentioned it is because there was a necessity, more or less, that created a sense of community.
Yeah.
Because we had the financial crisis, and you saw that the companies are being saved, and the middle class needed to adjust their bellies. Mm-hmm. And pay for that, and then we ended up with more sense of community. Yeah, you had Occupy Wall Street,
but it's still very marginal in a sense.
Yeah, we need a bigger crisis. Maybe we need a bigger crisis.
We need a bigger movement. I think we need a bigger movement, and I don't believe in revolutions, but I think that this should be and through economy. I think the best way to punish all this system is through money, the way we consume, and I think it's there.
But bigger, if you look at bigger movement, is that also what's happening in France currently with the Yellow Jackets?
Yeah, for example, I don't know where the Yellow Jackets will take. I mean, right now it's kind of fading. And I don't think that...
I haven't a clue. It's not on the news here. All I see is every Saturday some stuff on the internet.
No, of course. And I don't know if the reivindications is being followed 100%. And I don't know how positive was for change this movement. I think it's better than nothing. Now, what is the solution to that? It's very hard to say that is a solution. And I think first, the solution is, like you said at the beginning, through education and through a political system where their priority is that. That means the people in power need to start prioritizing this.
And also the art that you created around Monsanto, pictures that's very tangible, visible.
Yeah.
You have people with birth defects, and you have waste sites, and you have the Monsanto city. But the threats of this age have changed also. If you go back to the House of the Future back in 1957, currently, if you look at the House of the Future, that's the house that has everything IP connected. It has a fridge that's ordering its own food. Is that? Do you see that as a new threat to society as well?
It's hard to say. I'm connected like many of the people who are, I have a cell phone, who has internet, who has so many things. It's more technology in my phone than in the rocket that went to the moon. So I enjoy that, and I profit for this connectivity and this technological world. Now, this nonetheless, the consequences of that, we're feeling it today. But more than the technology is the way we consume technology, and it's a non-stop process. I think we change science for technology, because science is very hard to consume, but technology is easier to consume, and technology is a non-stop process. So I think more than the problem being technology, I think the problem is the way we consume technology. And again, I think the biggest problem we're facing today is the way we consume. We consume way too much. So
we're not making demands. We're buying the stuff that's being offered rather than investigate what that thing can do for us.
There we go. So we are, how many useless things we have around, including me, you, everybody. And we saw that, for example, electric cars would be the solution, and now we understand that to make the batteries of the electric cars, this is almost or more pollution than driving around with a diesel car for 10 years, 20 years.
Yeah. So why is that then? Why are we all being moved into electric cars if the pollution footprint of that thing is worse than
because cars need to be sold, because we have
money.
Powerful companies. And most of the problem about corporations is corporations are completely faceless. Corporations, they're not even accountable for their mess. Yeah. If you see HSBC and all the mess that happened, just to mention one, or Monsanto, they're not in jail. They're just paying money and that's it. So one of the big problems of corporations is they're faceless. So it's very hard to take them accountable for all this.
That would be the change then. So when I started to do politics, that accountability of the politicians and of the companies, that's the way forward.
Yeah,
I agree.
Yeah.
All right. So, but we're talking about Monsanto. Let's move to today, or 2015 rather, where in Holland we had a referendum that went into an association treaty with Ukraine. Now, the debate in that time in Holland was, do we want an association treaty? But it was not so much debated that in the treaty there was also articles that said Ukraine needs to also use GMO crops, and in that time also agricultural areas should be able to be purchased by Monsanto. Now, we've been talking about Monsanto and its history of pollution and of Agent Orange. Now we're in the time of GMOs. So is there environmental damage currently being done by the companies such as Monsanto? How do you look at that?
Of course, pesticides. We see the big problem with pesticides, and we see they're killing the land. The land is dead. Why we need so many fertilizers? Because the land is dead. We are overproducing and producing same crops, and the land is completely dead, and we need more and more pesticides and more fertilizers, and of course the problem with that is the contamination, air, soil, and water. So
have you gone to the countries where these seeds are being produced? And have you tried to include that?
I've been to the Midwest in the United States, and I see the mass production of corn, for example, and yeah, I mean, you see the soil. The soil is completely dead, and every year you need more and more fertilizer, and every year you need more pesticides because and more Roundup because weeds get Roundup resistant. So you need more, and so now. Forget about Roundup. Now they're marketing a new product that is called Canvas that is even more toxic. And this is not what I say. I talk to farmers in the Midwest and they say, you have no idea how crazy is this new product. So it's a non-stop thing.
How's it going to end then?
How it's going to end?
Yeah, where you see this going?
Oh, it's going to end that, I don't know, the scientists, I'm saying, in 30 years, we will start feeling very, very radical changes that will affect ourselves in a very radical way. We're meaning like people dying, people exciting for climate change, or the other solution is that we will wake up and we will say like, okay, we need to stop.
There are countries currently doing that. There are countries where GMOs are banned.
But in Europe, it's banned, the GMOs for human consumption.
Yeah.
Now we can feed animals with GMOs, GMOs that come from Argentina, Brazil, but we're still using large quantity of pesticides. If you see the wine industry in France, for example, the quantity of pesticides their use is huge, and you see all, for example, La Vallée du Rhône. That is one of the biggest wine producers. You go to Le Rhône, the river that goes in front of Arles. We cannot swim in that river. We cannot eat the fish of this river. Why? Because all these pesticides that are used.
What about this wine history of the book? You remember the book that people like?
Oh yeah, it's something very funny. A guy made a book saying like the taste of pesticides in the wine, and just to give you an idea, this guy say, how is possible that these wine tasters, they taste aromas of tobacco from the Indias and they taste grapes from fruits or cacao from South America, but they don't fucking taste the pesticide, that this is much of what is inside these crops. And so he started making people to taste the flavor of pesticides in wine.
Yeah.
And if you teach your tongue, you will start detecting.
I think this other thing that is important for you to talk about will be this idea of if we've got one seed that it's like the seed for corn and it got sick, then corn will be finished because it's going to be sick forever.
Yeah, the monocultures. Yeah.
We can lose our corn, our I don't know, our fruits. That's something that it's
that's one of the answers when I asked you where do you see this going. Well, famine could be where it is.
Oh no, but we're talking about many things. Famine, but also water supply. We start feeling the consequences of shortening.
So we did a history of Monsanto. We're currently in 2018.
Yeah,
it was bought by Bayer.
By Bayer, yeah.
Why?
Oh, because they want to have the control on the food industry. You remember who control food? Control a lot of things. Control people mostly. And this is the idea of the big conglomerates. I mean, look at Google. Google is buying everything in technology. Apple is. So this is a normal thing. These corporations are endless, growing. And more. So for Bayer, they thought that it's a good business, to control, to have the monopoly of food.
Monopoly.
Yeah, monopoly of food.
All right.
Maybe you can tell about the project in the Photographers Gallery. What happened when we decided to show Bayer and Monsanto's stock market? This new chapter.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I mean, we created a new chapter when Bayer got merged with Monsanto, but especially was a chapter we made called the Stock Exchange. When we won we were nominated, 4 nominated. One was the book of Monsanto for this Deutsche Box prize, and Deutsche Box sells Monsanto stocks and Bayer stocks, and we're nominated for a prize that gives this company. So we were like, okay, what we can do? This is why we did these tablets with the stock exchange. There are free apps from the Deutsche Box. So this was a way of talking about the problematics of stock market and the money and all this. Yeah.
So for me, this is a message of hope. I got into contact with you guys, and I see you traveling through the world with this exhibition, with your art, making people aware of companies like Monsanto and the effect on our society through your art. And also it lands into education systems, so that's cool.
At least we try as much as possible, yeah.
Oh, it's working.
It's working, yeah, I think it's working.
Yeah. So if people are... So we're in Amsterdam now. We're in the Ravestijn Gallery, which is close to Amsterdam Central Station, until July 31st.
That's it.
Yeah. Where are you heading next time? What's
so next time we're going... Australia is the next exhibition. And after that, we have at least 4 more already... we're working on the schedule, so I cannot talk about it because they're not nailed down. Yeah. But at least 4 more, and let's see. Hopefully, this will keep going for.
It's been going for 2 years. You're doing good.
Yeah.
And won multiple awards.
Yeah.
That's rewarding. Yeah. If you look back on the creation of this thing, you've been going around the world with your camera for a couple of years, then created the book and now the exhibition. Mm-hmm. Is that rewarding?
It is. It is rewarding. I think you invest 5 years doing that, almost 6 years, and it's working. It's exactly what I mean, it's more than what I hope it will do, but at least in spreading the message, there was the original idea was that to do a work like that too, try to spread the message as much as possible.
Excellent. Thanks for talking to us.
But thank you very much.
Mathieu Asselin and Sergio Valenzuela Escobedo.
Thanks.
Perfect.